Part 50 of The Golden Bough, being chapters 68 and 69. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For further information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Golden Bough by Sir James Frazer. Chapter 68. The Golden Bough. Thus the view that Balder's life was in the mistletoe is entirely in harmony with primitive modes of thought. It may indeed sound like a contradiction that if his life was in the mistletoe he should nevertheless have been killed by a blow from the plant. But when a person's life is conceived as embodied in a particular object, with the existence of which his own existence is inseparably bound up, and the destruction of which involves his own, the object in question may be regarded and spoken of indifferently as his life or his death, as happens in the fairy tales. Hence, if a man's death is in an object, it is perfectly natural that he should be killed by a blow from it. In the fairy tales, Koshchei the Deathless is killed by a blow from the egg or the stone in which his life or death is secreted. The ogres burst when a certain grain of sand, doubtless containing their life or death, is carried over their heads. The magician dies when the stone in which his life or death is contained is put under his pillow, and the Tartar hero is warned that he may be killed by the golden arrow or golden sword in which his soul has been stowed away. The idea that the life of the oak was in the mistletoe was probably suggested, as I have said, by the observation that in winter the mistletoe growing on the oak remains green while the oak itself is leafless. But the position of the plant, growing not from the ground but from the trunk or branches of the tree, might confirm this idea. Primitive man might think that, like himself, the oak spirit had sought to deposit his life in some safe place, and for this purpose had pitched on the mistletoe, which, being in a sense neither on earth nor in heaven, might be supposed to be fairly out of harm's way. In a former chapter we saw that primitive man seeks to preserve the life of his human divinities by keeping them poised between earth and heaven, as the place where they are least likely to be assailed by the dangers that encompass the life of man on earth. We can therefore understand why it has been the rule both of ancient and of modern folk medicine that the mistletoe should not be allowed to touch the ground. Were it to touch the ground, its healing virtue would be gone. This may be a survival of the old superstition that the plant in which the life of the sacred tree was concentrated should not be exposed to the risk incurred by contact with the earth. In an Indian legend, which offers a parallel to the Balder myth, Indra swore to the demon Namuchi that he would slay him neither by day nor by night, neither with staff nor with bow, neither with the palm of the hand nor with the fist, neither with the wet nor with the dry. But he killed him in the morning twilight by sprinkling over him the foam of the sea. The foam of the sea is just such an object as a savage might choose to put his life in, because it occupies that sort of intermediate or nondescript position between earth and sky, or sea and sky, in which primitive man sees safety. It is therefore not surprising that the foam of the river should be the totem of a clan in India. Again, the view that the mistletoe owes its mystic character partly to its not growing on the ground is confirmed by a parallel superstition about the mountain ash or rowan tree. In Jutland a rowan that is found growing out of the top of another tree is esteemed exceeding effective against witchcraft, since it does not grow on the ground, witches have no power over it. If it is to have its full effect it must be cut on Ascension Day. Hence it is placed over doors to prevent the ingress of witches. In Sweden and Norway also magical properties are ascribed to a flying rowan, flögrön, that is, to a rowan which is found growing not in the ordinary fashion on the ground, but on another tree, or on a roof, or in a cleft of the rock, where it has sprouted from seed scattered by birds. They say that a man who is out in the dark should have a bit of flying rowan with him to chew, else he runs a risk of being bewitched and being unable to stir from the spot. Just as in Scandinavia the parasitic rowan is deemed a countercharm to sorcery, so in Germany the parasitic mistletoe is still commonly considered a protection against witchcraft, and in Sweden, as we saw, the mistletoe which is gathered on Midsummer Eve is attached to the ceiling of the house, the horse's stall, or the cow's crib, in the belief that this renders the Troll powerless to injure man or beast. The view that the mistletoe was not merely the instrument of Balder's death, but that it contained his life, is countenanced by the analogy of a Scottish superstition. Tradition ran that the fate of the Hayes of Errol, an estate in Perthshire near the Firth of Tay, was bound up with the mistletoe that grew on a certain great oak. A member of the Hay family has recorded the old belief as follows. Among the Low Country families the badges are now almost generally forgotten, but it appears by an ancient manuscript and the traditions of a few old people in Perthshire that the badge of the Hays was the mistletoe. There was formerly in the neighbourhood of Errol, and not far from the Falcon Stone, a vast oak of an unknown age, and upon which grew a profusion of the plant. Many charms and legends were considered to be connected with the tree, and the duration of the family of Hay was said to be united with its existence. It was believed that a sprig of the mistletoe cut by a Hay on Allhallowmas Eve with a new dirk, and after surrounding the tree 3 times sunwise, and pronouncing a certain spell, was a sure charm against all glamour or witchery, and an infallible guard in the day of battle. A spray gathered in the same manner was placed in the cradle of infants, and thought to defend them from being changed for elf bairns by the fairies. Finally, it was affirmed that when the root of the oak had perished, the grass should grow in the hearth of Errol, and a raven should sit in the falcon's nest. The 2 most unlucky deeds which could be done by one of the name of Hay was to kill a white falcon, and to cut down a limb from the oak of Errol. When the old tree was destroyed I could never learn. The estate has been sold out of the family of Hay, and of course it is said that the fatal oak was cut down a short time before. The old superstition is recorded in verses which are traditionally ascribed to Thomas the Rhymer. While the mistletoe bats on Errol's aik, and that aik stands fast, the Hays shall flourish, and their good grey hawk shall nacht flinch before the blast. But when the root of the aik decays, and the mistletoe dwines on its withered breast, the grass shall grow on Errol's hearth stane, and the corby roop in the falcon's nest. It is not a new opinion that the golden bough was the mistletoe. True, Virgil does not identify, but only compares it with mistletoe, but this may be only a poetical device to cast a mystic glamour over the humble plant. Or, more probably, his description was based on a popular superstition that at a certain time the mistletoe blazed out into a supernatural golden glory. The poet tells how 2 doves, guiding Aeneas to the gloomy vale in whose depth grew the golden bough, alighted upon a tree, whence shone a flickering gleam of gold, as in the woods in winter cold the mistletoe, a plant not native to its tree, is green with fresh leaves, and twines its yellow berries about the boles, such seemed upon the shady holm oak the leafy gold, so rustled in the gentle breeze the golden leaf. Here Virgil definitely describes the golden bough as growing on a holm oak, and compares it with the mistletoe. The inference is almost inevitable that the golden bough was nothing but the mistletoe seen through the haze of poetry or of popular superstition. Now grounds have been shown for believing that the priest of the Arician grove, the king of the wood, personified the tree on which grew the golden bough. Hence, if that tree was the oak, the king of the wood must have been a personification of the oak spirit. It is therefore easy to understand why, before he could be slain, it was necessary to break the golden bough. As an oak spirit, his life or death was in the mistletoe on the oak, and so long as the mistletoe remained intact, he, like Balder, could not die. To slay him, therefore, it was necessary to break the mistletoe, and probably, as in the case of Balder, to throw it at him. And to complete the parallel, it is only necessary to suppose that the king of the wood was formerly burnt, dead or